Today, we're going to be talking about narcissistic personality disorder. Yes, people with narcissistic personality disorder walk amongst us every single day. It could be your mother, it could be your father, and it could be your sister. But let's not get confused between a narcissist and someone with a narcissistic personality disorder.
Welcome to the What's Eating You podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Giorgio, and I'm a clinical psychologist.
Welcome back. If you're new to the What's Eating You podcast, I am so excited you are here. My name is Stephanie, and I'm a clinical psychologist here to break down mental health topics in easy and accessible, bite-sized information. I'm the creator of Food Freedom, a 12-week program that helps you overcome binge eating, bulimia, food preoccupation, and body image dissatisfaction. And I also have a membership called ADHD Journey. So if you need help with your ADHD, you can join for as little as $5.80. The discount and link is below. Now, what got into this topic? I got asked on TikTok, what is NPD? Now, narcissistic personality disorder is a personality disorder. I'm going to explain what it is, the clinical criteria. I'm going to go through real world like examples, and disclaimer, this is not a substitute for therapy or medical advice. And I'm going to talk about the difference between narcissistic traits, which aren't always bad, and then having the clinical disorder and what you can do to start to notice this in your everyday life. Because unfortunately, I do work with people who go on this journey and realize, oh my God, that's my mum. My mum is a narcissist. So hopefully this episode will help you figure it out. Now, narcissism occurs on a spectrum. You can have narcissistic traits and then narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder is a diagnosable mental health condition in the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic Bible we use to diagnose people. And there are different personality disorders that fall into three clusters. Now, we're going to talk about cluster B today. And if you want to know more about cluster B personality disorders, let me know and I can do a more detailed video. I do quick videos on my TikTok, but if you're watching on YouTube and you want a longer video, let me know in the comments. So in cluster B, a personality disorder is characterized by impulsivity. They can be emotional and sometimes turbulent. Now, narcissistic personality disorder, it's a long-term pattern. That's why it's called a personality disorder, because it forms and develops with your personality. And this is why personality disorders aren't typically diagnosed before the age of 18, because your personality is still forming. Narcissistic personality disorder, people typically don't go to therapy to get help with this. Usually someone asks them to go to therapy and it's for other reasons. Relationship issues, anxieties, difficulty holding down friendships, and sometimes they can appear in therapy for completely unrelated reasons and not know why, because the person with the narcissistic personality disorder often think everyone else is the problem. So it's more than just being self-centered. It's more than being selfish. It's a long-term pattern of grandiosity. And I'll go through the clinical criteria in a moment. But grandiosity means you think you're grand. You think you're better than everyone else. A strong need for admiration. So people with NPD need to be admired, need to be liked, need to be praised all the time. And the third most determinant characteristic is a lack of empathy, because you might be thinking, oh my God, so many people want to be liked and admired and think they're amazing, but they may not have a lack of empathy or remorse towards other people. And this affects how the person thinks, how they feel, how they relate to others, and how they handle emotions. Now, narcissistic personality disorder, it usually develops in adolescence or early childhood, and it can affect family, work, and relationships. And like I said, it's usually that secondary reason that might bring these people into therapy, but it's not always the case. I probably had maybe one or two people with NPD that I've worked with, but I'd say a very self-aware narcissist. And there's different types. I can do another video on the types of narcissists, But just remember that narcissist doesn't mean narcissistic personality disorder. So don't get the two confused. So what is the diagnostic criteria?
Do you struggle with attention, remembering important details such as appointments or even replying to a text? Organisation and day-to-day life stuff such as cooking and cleaning? You are not alone. You may even find it harder than others to manage your emotions. Or do you feel sensitive to perceived rejection or criticism? These are just some of the symptoms we may see in someone who has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. However, even if you don't have diagnosed ADHD, we live in a society where we all struggle at times with our executive functioning. Your executive functioning is the CEO of your brain. It's responsible for planning, remembering, processing information, motivation, attention, and getting started on tasks. There are limited spots in this amazing program, so don't wait to book in. Stay tuned for the release date, and I can't wait to have you be part of the community.
So essentially, to meet this diagnosis, there's 9 criteria, and you need 5 out of the 9 criteria. It's the same with other personality disorders such as borderline. But just because you have these 5 criteria, it still doesn't mean you have it. It needs to negatively impact your life on a consistent basis. So let's go through the 9 criterias of borderline personality disorder. That was wrong. Let's go through the 9 diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. And I know I'm going to get asked, can you have borderline and narcissistic personality disorder? Yes, you can have more than one personality disorder, and it's actually more likely to have 2 personality disorders that are in the same cluster. And in cluster B, which is your impulsive, emotional, you've got narcissistic, histrionic, borderline, and antisocial. So you're more likely to have 2 in that little family. So the first clinical criteria of narcissistic personality disorder is an inflated sense of self or grandiosity. So they think they are better than everyone else. So, for example, they might constantly brag about their achievements and their accomplishments and what they've done. I'm the only one in this office that knows what I'm doing. And an example is Jordan Belfort in The Wolf of Wall Street. If you've seen that movie, this is a really clear example of those traits. And throughout the movie, he is under the influence of substances quite often, which can happen with this personality disorder, but that can also lead to the sense of grandiosity. But it has to be consistent. It's not like they won an award and they have this inflated sense of grandiosity. Oh my God, go me. It's every day. It's consistent. All right. Number 2 is fantasies of unlimited success, power, beauty, or love. And what this means is the person is obsessed or imagines becoming famous or being admired, but they may not necessarily work towards those goals. They just believe that they deserve it. Like, I should be famous. Why aren't I famous? Actually, without saying names, this actually reminds me of a recent social media scandal where one person was sharing a private voice note from another person saying, like, that should be me. I should be famous. I should have this many million followers. So they just believe that they deserve this success without necessarily working towards it. So they have these fantasies of success, power, beauty, and love. Now, the third criteria is they believe they are special and should only associate with high status people. So, for example, they might refuse to go to an event unless there's important people there that they can benefit from. They might name drop to boost their image. Here is an example: Patrick Bateman in American Psycho. Again, fictional and extreme, but the traits overlap. I don't think I've actually, have I seen that movie? I might need to watch it again, American Psycho. But movies are really good. If you're someone who's studying psychology, you want to learn more about psychology, watching movies and actually, we're not diagnosing anyone, putting themes on the characters can really help you understand different personality traits. So, number 4 is excessive admiration. They are always fishing for compliments. Do you like my clothes? Do you like my shirt? Do you like my hair? And they need reassurance constantly. And if people don't praise them, they get sulky or angry. So, I'll give you an example. A few of my clients that I used to work with had narcissistic mothers. And if the clients didn't give their mothers praise or acknowledgement, they'd get the silent treatment for 2 weeks. And then it was, do you know how much I've sacrificed for you? Do you know how hard I work? And then the whole guilt trip spiral. You know what that feels like. So they fish for compliments. And an example, I haven't seen this, but Don Draper in Mad Men thrives on admiration and spirals when the admiration isn't there. Now, the next criteria, so we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, which is 5, which is the sense of entitlement. They believe that rules don't apply to them. Why should I have to line up? Do you know who I am? Like cutting cues, special favors, or demanding better treatment because of who they are. Tony Stark in early Iron Man movies has this classic entitlement streak, though he evolves. I'm just trying to think of other examples. But for example, Mean Girls is interesting because the key character, Regina George, you could argue that she is more histrionic rather than narcissistic, but I'd say she probably has traits of both. Now, the next one is they exploit others. Now, this is the key difference because people will be like, but are people with ADHD and they narcissistic? Not necessarily, because the purpose and intention behind their behavior is different. People with ADHD, they might come across interpersonally rude or whatever because of impulsivity, but it's not because they're deliberately exploiting people. Whereas narcissistic personality disorder, they use their friends, they use their partners for money, status, or opportunities without guilt. They don't feel that remorse. So, for example, they wouldn't be here without me anyway. Regina George in Mean Girls. I love that bracelet. Where did you get it? Type of vibe. They're manipulative, they're charming, they're exploitive. And this is what people don't realize is narcissists walk among us. They're your friends, they're your family. They don't have any, like, they're not wearing a name tag, but very, very common themes and traits. If you've recently watched, I highly recommend it if you haven't, go and watch Ginny and Georgia on Netflix. Absolutely incredible. And this is the perfect depiction of a woman with narcissistic personality disorder. She is charming. She's liked by everyone. She will win everyone over, but she's also not afraid to throw people under the bus. Okay, the next criteria is, which I think we're on to 7, is they lack empathy. So they dismiss other people's feelings. They might just respond with, get over it, you're being dramatic. And even if someone's upset, they'll turn it on themselves like, oh, I can't do anything right. Now, an example, again, I haven't seen this one. Oh, I have. Catch Me If You Can, Frank Abagnale Jr. in Catch Me If You Can. Charming, but oblivious to how his lies hurt people. Again, I would say this is prominent in Ginny and Georgia as well, if you haven't watched that. So number 8, the clinical criteria of someone with narcissistic personality disorder is envious of others or believe that others envy them. They think everyone is jealous of them. I think in Mean Girls, she says, oh, you're in love with me. Everyone's in love with me, to Janice Ian. And then she does that same pattern. She thinks everyone is in love with her. Joe Goldberg in You shows envy masked as romantic obsession. Okay, so that's an example of envious of others or believes others are envious of them. They really struggle to celebrate other people's success. If you want to determine if someone's a narcissist, share your win and see how they react. There might be little your achievement, like, oh, the test was easy, or you fluked it. She only got that because she hooked up with the boss or whatever. Now, the last one for narcissistic personality disorder is arrogant or haughty behaviors. So, for example, they talk down to others, they assume that other people are not as intellectually smart as them, they think they're more morally superior, and they might criticize other people for being ordinary or boring. Example, Doctor Strange before his accident, brilliant but insufferable. I haven't watched that either. Now, here's the statistics because it is pretty rare, but I think it's not as rare as we think. It's rare for a person with narcissistic personality disorder to go get help and get diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. So just remember, the statistics are only from people who actually go and get diagnosed with it. So 0.5 to 5% of the general population may meet the criteria for NPD. NPD is more common in men than it is in females, but again, it's probably more obvious in males, or males, maybe they're more likely to find out that they have it, which is crazy because these estimates are from 50 to 75% of people with NPD are males. But again, remember, 6% of clinical samples in therapy settings show signs of narcissistic personality disorder. And many people with NPD don't seek treatment. They're very unlikely to seek treatment. They're unlikely to get help, but they usually will go in for a secondary issue, depression, substance use, or another personality disorder. So remember, not all narcissistic personality traits are bad. It's easy to hate on it, but there's many people with NPD who are actually suffering on the inside and under the surface. Many people with narcissistic personality disorder grew up in invalidating, traumatizing, chaotic environments, and the grandiosity is a mask for their low self-worth. They usually think if I'm not the best at something, then I'm nothing. So it's driven by that low self-esteem. So, final thoughts. If someone in your life has narcissistic traits, it's okay. Don't stress. They still can be good people. Set boundaries with them. Don't take the bait if they're trying to argue with you. Distance yourself and escape conversations if needed. And just always do an audit. Do an audit on your friendships, do an audit on your relationships, do an audit on your family members, and hang around people that make you feel safe, seen, heard, and valued. If you enjoyed this episode, please let me know. I do apologize if there is background sound. The wind is so loud at the moment and there's other people talking. It's not very, this audio is okay for you. If you like this, share it with a friend. Send it to someone if you need to hear this episode. Leave a rating and a review, and I'll see you next time.
Did you know by taking 2 seconds to leave a rating or a review, you help me get the podcast out to more listeners just like you who could really benefit from the information? I appreciate all your support and thank you for tuning in.